Pokémon Day is around the corner, and when this date is here, mainly in a 30th anniversary celebration, we are always sure of three things. We will get a Cafe Remix update, people will complain no matter what, and talks of remakes and remasters will flood the internet. And one of those rumors were true. Ports of Pokémon FireRed and Leaf Green were just announced for the Switch. And as always, when people debate anything about Kanto, someone will jump out of a bush to say, why would you want to pay for a game you can play on an emulator? And then someone replies, let people enjoy things! Why is it not on the Switch Online? And then Joe Merrick will explain it's because Game Freak is really annoying about cloud save data. Discourse ensues. Everybody gets called a glazer or a Gen 1er, and the engagement keeps on engaging, the circle of life. But when I saw this trailer this morning, something weird hit me, because, I would definitely play a Gen 1 game on the Switch too, don't get me wrong. Not only do I like having the games I keep on replaying on my main console, but I'm also very easy when it comes to Game Boy era Pokémon. You can tell me that so easily. If you say you are making a small change, like making it widescreen or home compatibility, that already sells me into playing Kanto again. But this is actually the weird feeling I got. I don't think I would want to play FireRed and Leaf Green again. As weird as that sounds, I would jump at the opportunity to play the glitchy, weirdly sprited, with tiles where you don't know if it's a cliff or a net, Gen 1 games. But FireRed and Leaf Green? I guess I'll pass. And you might point at me and say, it's nostalgia goggles, and call me a Gen 1er, and call me an unk, and all of that would be kinda right, but still there's something else. I think the Gen 1 games just look better. Why on earth do I think the Gen 1 games look better? Am I insane? I think there's no better way to celebrate Pokemon's 30th anniversary than to allow myself to be a Gen 1er for a little bit, for old time's sake. So today, we will be glazing Dear Stranger Online, so put on your Charizard t-shirt and your Gengar cap. Today, I will try to understand why, even with all the messy glitches, low budget, and critical hit calcs held together with bubblegum and tape, do I still love these games more than any remake? And why do I think that 30-year-old Kanto looks kinda really beautiful? Of course, I need to say, I am biased. I've spent the last few months in my parents' house, and I have so many memories of my Game Boy and me in every single corner of this place. And that Game Boy was playing Pokemon Yellow, not FireRed. Every room I walk in, I can see little Cecily with her Pikachu, the 16-bit sound font, and the faint green reflective screen. So, case closed, it's just my own nostalgia. Don't forget to check my Pokemon Day live stream, like and subscribe. Except, I think there's something more to it. I think Gen 1 has a charm to it that is unique to passion projects that everyone involved is sure will fail, but they keep on pushing anyway. Like Game Freak had no idea they were about to start the biggest franchise in the world. It was just a 10-person team working for 6 years in a project that seemed would never see the light of day. We joke about Game Freak being an indie company today, but in the 90s, it was basically it. A small team slowly going bankrupt. Spending 6 years on a Game Boy game was unheard of. Pokémon Red and Green were stuck in development hell and basically burning money away. Satoshi Tajiri stopped paying himself. 5 employees literally quit because the company couldn't make payroll. Mind you, this was 1996, and the Game Boy was a console reaching the end of its life cycle. The PlayStation was out, the N64 was coming, 3D was the future. And this team was betting their entire livelihoods on a green and white RPG for a console everyone said was dead. But they were doing it together. According to Ken Sugimori, all the staff members, about 10 people at the time, came up with ideas for Pokémon. Everyone had their positions, programmers, graphic designers, planners, etc. But everyone pitched in and helped out on pretty much every aspect of the game. And the end result looks like this. I was having this debate online, and when trying to put into words why I just find these beautiful, I couldn't find them, so I just tweeted that it feels like Mulholland Drive, while FireRed and Leaf Green look like Thor, Love and Thunder. And I think what I mean is that it looks like a hazy memory, lost in the corner of your mind, turvy and foggy, hauntingly beautiful. Even though these games literally have 2 colors, you feel the sun and the sea breeze in vermilion, as well as the darkness and heavy air of Lavender Town. And you can't really explain why. Like something in the back of your mind you can't remember if it really happened or if it's all a dream. It's a bit of show don't tell, yes, because of artistic choices, but also the hardware limitations of the Game Boy, and that lack of information gives space for your imagination to fill in the rest. That's why Scarlet and Violet look so underwhelming. All you see is all there is to see. There is no room to imagine there's more. This desert is this desert, this rock is this rock, this texture is this texture. And even though you could argue that the original Gen 1 games are as glitchy as Gen 9, the Switch is doing all the work here to show Paldea to you. In the Game Boy, Kanto is as big or as vast or as colorful as you want it to be. It's subjectiveness that lets you only wonder where the SSN could be heading to. Who lives in the saffron skyscrapers? You get surf and your world expands drastically for new islands, villages, caves, and the world. And no one knows how deep it goes. Wait, sorry, that's Moana. But when going down my rabbit hole to elaborate the Mulholland Driveness of Kanto, luckily, I could count on my little community to elaborate this much better. So let me read some of the favorite messages that I got. Kiel wrote that this is a child's idea of a town. You and your mate's house and a third spot you'd hang out at. There are other townsfolk walking about, but your little brain is too little to imagine they would need to sleep somewhere at night. Nigel K. Art said, the less our brains fill in the gaps, the smaller the world seems. Red, blue, and yellow feels much more industrial. FireRed Leaf Green cities feel small since all the ambiguous grounds and barricades are now just grass and wood fences. But I think my favorite comment is from Autumn, who wrote, I've been on this for a couple of years now. Gen 1 is kinda special, there's an aesthetic uniqueness to it that no Pokémon game since has captured. Even really well-made fan games dedicated to capturing it have tried and failed. It gives you a feeling not unlike the one you feel while watching a lot of Ghibli movies. A lot of the vibe is also very much due to the technical limitations. The pixel art and the Game Boy sound font give your brain just enough to interpret what's going on, but not enough that your brain doesn't naturally add to it. And again, as a 6-year-long passion project, which might as well have been the last thing Game Freak ever did, what they chose to show was not a fantastic alien world of monsters and mystical creatures with heavy and complex lore. Their Pokémon world, the world they wanted other kids to adventure in, was literally their childhood home. Kanto, a real place in Japan, but in a version that shows as a nostalgic memory of a Japanese countryside Game Freak grew up in, met people in, explored the world in. This is so clear in the choice of watercolor art direction for the official art, as opposed to other trendy design trends of the 90s, such as 3D stuff. It's just as dreamy and nostalgic as the game itself. It's perfectly imperfect. And even with janky sprites that are not brand compliant, they manage to sacrifice accuracy for personality, like the Mercator projection, weird little creatures in a world that feels real, that was made with care. According to Sugimori, it's a small screen and low storage space. We couldn't use a lot of pixels to show all the details, so we made sprites that were easy to understand and symbolize more complex designs. I mean, look at Jigglypuff. It's funky, but it oozes charm. It doesn't follow brand guidelines, it doesn't need to be mass-produced into plushies or an animated series or increase shareholder value in a multimedia franchise. It's just there, waiting for you to casually come across in a little adventure and think, it's cute and silly and I love it, let me grab my Pokeball. And then we get to why I think FireRed and Leaf Green don't feel the same. They are great games and objectively played better than the originals, but I have very little reason to go back to them. I recently watched Tamahiro's review of these games, and I think that's why I chose to compare them to Thor Love and Thunder. They are colorful, correct, brand compliant, and kind of bland. Jigglypuff here isn't a funny monster for a player to casually find. It's a household name, an anime star, a trademark that is worth millions of dollars in merchandising and advertising. Lady Gaga's duet partner. There's little room for whimsy and experimentation. It needs to comply to the brand. Let me quote Thelma here because her video is so good and you should go watch it later, but she says that
the biggest problem is that FireRed and Leaf Green were the first Pokemon games that were pretty clearly not designed as a labor of passion by the developers, who had some story they really wanted to tell or some mechanic set that they really wanted to explore, but rather a corporate decision. FireRed and Leaf Green are business moves first and games second, and that permeates every aspect of their design.
Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn have something to say. There's something these games want to do story-wise or gameplay-wise or world-building-wise. Meanwhile, FireRed and Leaf Green were games that were commissioned by higher-ups at Nintendo and rushed out in barely a year because they needed software to bundle with their new wireless adapter. They are using an art direction and an engine that were made for Hoenn, and it looks great for Hoenn's themes and tropical summer motifs, but here it feels like fitting a round block in a square. It's a product designed to be safe, functional, and profitable, and I mean, almost all entries in the Pokemon series today are, but when you put it side by side with Gen 1, I think that it really shows. But again, this is not a video about why I don't feel like replaying that Kanto. It's still an incredible game with really cool additions such as the Sevi Islands, the Altering Cave, the Aurora Ticket, but this is a video about how there's much to appreciate in Red, Blue, and Yellow for newer Pokemon fans. A video about why I think that, despite being buggy, having horrible menus, a horrendous bag item system, and a combat system that only works half the time, I still think they are beautiful. That's the word. Not incredible gameplay experiences, not that they withstood the test of time, but they are beautiful. A time capsule not only of gaming in the 90s, not only of the genesis of Pokemania, but also of the childhoods and original visions these 10 developers had for their adventures. Gen 1 is not set in the Pokemon world. It's set in the memories of Ken Sugimori, Satoshi Tajiri, Atsuko Nishida, and all the developers at Game Freak, and I think that's super Mulholland Drive. And that's something that I think most newer Pokemon fans fail to see or value sometimes. When I see a lot of discourse on how inaccessible or boring or hard to replay these games are for someone who might have started with Sun and Moon or Black and White, I think people find it hard to see it through that lens. A game that doesn't let you run, it makes you take it all in. To appreciate Gen 1, it needs to be looked through a less utilitarian lens, instead through the haze of a subjective childhood memory. Memories of Game Freak developers, and memories of the fans who grew up with much less hardware than what we have today. And sure, Gen 1ers are annoying, and ignoring everything that came after and saying only the original 151 deserve attention is an incredibly reductionist discourse that we should all avoid at all costs in this community, but I don't think it's Gen 1er to claim we should see Gen 1 with kind eyes. Just like Johto, Hoenn, Alola, and Galar games, which I also love, each one in its own special way, and kind eyes not only in a way of we wouldn't have Pokemon without them, or it laid the foundation for everything that came after. That's utilitarian. We need kind eyes to see these games as art, as subjective expressions of an independent studio of people wanting to share something deeply personal to them, through a story we all love. Because recently someone asked me why I love Pokemon, and I answered it's because of the little stories it tells. I have little stories of playing Sun and Moon in college, or of learning how to EV train in my grandma's house in X and Y, but I will cherish forever the stories of me with my OG Game Boy in every corner of my childhood home, in the back of my parents' car during a road trip, with a game that was buggy and small and blocky and gave room for my imagination to run wild. That didn't show me the Pokemon world as it was, but as I wanted it to be. And I think that if you love Pokemon, but you're a bit younger than me, it's an experience I would really love if you had the chance to have. My dream scenario, my fever dream, would be that if we are getting Gen 1, let's enable new and old fans to experience this original artistic vision from 1996. Forget HD2D, or BDSP, or Octopath Traveler lightning effects, like, they dropped this news in a random Friday. I can only imagine what they are saving next week for Pokemon Day. Could there be more stuff? Well, if we are porting more Kanto to the Switch, I would love to see the Gen 1 games looking exactly as they did, just with some quality of life changes. Accessible level curves, better menus, movesets, home connectivity, and add visible shiny Pokemon, because why not? Nora needs her Gen 1 Raichu urgently. I think these are beautiful games, and if we are going to celebrate them, it should be them as they were, pixel by pixel. Oh sure, I didn't talk about Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. They are pretty too. Great following mechanics. In my opinion, looking much better than FireRed and Leaf Green, albeit also working as an excuse to achieve a business goal, but I don't know. I mean, just let me glaze my subjective, dreamy, buggy pixel art. I love pixel art.